Hello and welcome to TransByDef. My name is Morgan Fay and this week's topic is Purging Blues and Restarting Transition. So I'm not going to talk so much about purging blues, but more about purging phobias, because that's really what held me back. Um, like most trans women, I knew I was female at a very young age. When I was 7, I got a hold of one of my mother's textbooks on human sexuality, and I knew the definition for gender identity disorder since then. Of course, this was in the 80s, and it was nestled between things like bestiality and pedophilia. So, um, my I thought that there was something wrong with me, that this wasn't normal. So it actually gave me the tools in order to suppress myself. So, in a sense, it wasn't a good thing. It just allowed me to hide myself even more fully and to adopt a male persona. Um, when I was in um, my teenage years, I surrounded myself with male friends that weren't very macho. So I didn't have to constantly do that masculine chest beating game that they all play, and I wouldn't have to be taxed as much on just social interactions. Um, and I eventually confided in most of them that I was, so to speak, a woman trapped in a man's body, and uh, they were pretty okay with it, but it was also given to them in the same tone of, well, there's nothing I can do about it, there's nothing I can do to change it, and, I just have to accept the way I am. And a lot of this also comes from the fact that in my childhood, the men were not very reliable. They were cheaters, liars. They would always let you down. But the women were always strong. The women are what held the family together. They're the ones who did everything that needed to be done. My mother, worked 3 jobs to help support me. So women always held a special place, in a sense, up on a pedestal. And I also had this insecurity that I didn't deserve to be female, that being born as a native boy kind of to want to be a woman was a sacrilege, was something that I had no right to do. And then of course there was the fear that I wouldn't be able to transition well. Especially back then I didn't know about HRT and a lot of other options that are available now. So I always worried about becoming some sort of Frankenstein. Now, when I was in my early 20s, I was at a point in my life where I was ready to give up, and I decided, well, you know what, I'm just going to try to do the transition thing instead, because what do I have to lose? I was already ready to check out of life, so there was no harm in at least trying. But events in my life conspired against it. I had gotten only as far as letting my hair grow out, my nails grow out, and I had just gotten in some anti-androgens, and I was trying to track down some Premarin, which we're talking over 15 years ago, so getting hold of this stuff wasn't exactly easy. Um, and I had started the anti-androgen, and had been on it for working on about 2 weeks, when an old relationship of mine kind of forced its way back into my life, and I was put back into that caretaker role. And at the time, transitioning just wasn't something that was going to be possible. So I allowed it to be an excuse to allow me to stop, excuse to give in to my fears and to give in to my insecurities. And I put it aside, and I put it away for well over a decade and a half, before I decided just to transition again, just a little while ago. So the restart process for me took a long time, and I regret that I didn't do it back then, because I was ready to, but I allowed myself to give in to my fears. This time around, when I did decide to transition, there was a sense of excitement about it, but the fears of not transitioning well, of becoming a Frankenstein, and the insecurity about not deserving it still rose its head. And the way I dealt with that was I set my goals lower. My goal was just to not be a guy. If I didn't make it all the way across the spectrum, then so be it. I was just tired of having to live the role of the guy, so an androgynous life was something that was much more desirable, something that I could expect to be able to achieve, and something that didn't, bring up concerns that I wasn't deserving of it. Uh, and as the HRT began to take effect, and as my worldview began to change, and as I began to feel good about myself and right with myself, um, my goals changed, and I found out that I am feminine, and I can also be quite girly, and that was something that was really unexpected. It makes my wife uh, laugh quite a bit by how much of the changes are. Um, and this wasn't, like I said, this was unexpected, how much the changes have been. Um, I had one image of myself. I even bought clothes ahead of time for that image, and that's not how things turned out. And that's fine. That's been great. It's been an interesting ride figuring out who I am, and meeting myself for the first time and being surprised. And what held me back for so long, and my regret for so long, is just that I was afraid to do it. So it's the fear that you're going to be worse off. But for a lot of us, our own dysphoria is our worst prison. It's our worst nightmare, and we live it every day. And even if all it is a matter of getting right with yourself, and you don't transition socially, it's still a better situation. It's a better life than trying to live as someone that you're not. So don't let your fears get the better of you. You've got to overcome them if you want to be able to be who you are. So that's it for this week on TransByDef. I hope to see you next week. Have a good day.